Thank you all again for joining us. Dr. Wang Huiyao is the founder and president of the Center for China and Globalization. It's one of the best known of the Chinese think tanks here in Beijing. My name is Keith Bradsher, and I'm the Shanghai bureau chief of the New York Times. With that, Henry and I would like to start talking. I guess, first of all, the big news, the big surprise today, Henry, is the announcement in the United States that President Trump and the First Lady have both tested positive for the coronavirus. Is that a surprise? It has been reported already by state media in China. What is the reaction here? What is your immediate response to this?
Thank you, Keith, for hosting this, and also thank Athens Democracy Forum for inviting me. And so we'll be very pleased to join the dialogue with you, Keith. I think the question you raised on President Trump get caught in COVID-19 is really a big surprise, but probably also no surprise as well, because he has been working so hard. He's been campaigning. He was just debating with Vice President Biden. One of the things that surprised me that he probably seldom wear a mask, and that probably so it surprised me. It won't surprise me because that precaution is really important. As some U.S. expert says, if you wear a mask, you probably cut half by the casualty and infection. So I really hope that President Trump will have a speedy recovery, and also hope that he can come back to his campaign, and also the final phase of U.S. democratic election process. So I wish him a speed recovery. But also, it's really serves as a reminder that how vulnerable we are, and we really have to follow and expert advice, and we really practice social distance and wear masks. That's probably the lesson we learned from this.
There have been no locally transmitted cases reported for more than 6 weeks. Just last weekend, I was at the Beijing Auto Show, and there were thousands of people. They were wearing masks there, but even to have thousands of people gathered for a big event like that is something that's not happening in large parts of the world right now. How different is daily life right now here in China compared to the West during the pandemic?
Well, I think it's really big the difference now, it seems to me. For example, I mean, this has been started in Wuhan, and then it was caught China off guard, and then I think they quickly realized how deadly this virus are, and then they locked down the whole city of 11 million of Wuhan and the 6 million of the Hubei province, and China actually basically also shut down for 2 or 3 months. But I think that the methodology that they've been adopting, that wear mask mandatory, social distance, and also big data tracing, and this quarantine, and all those measures combined with that of collectivism, of sacrifice on the individual side, it's quickly actually brought the situation under control. And now I've been in this 8 days of holiday, national holiday, and the Mid-Autumn Festival. There are going to be 100 million people travel in China. I was coming back from Beijing yesterday, and the whole plane was fully loaded. And now everywhere you go, as you said, going to be very crowded now. But I think the problem that people don't wear masks that much now is because there's no local occur cases. All cases are detected are the imported cases. So that if there's no local cases, you don't worry so much when you go to the crowds, or go to the restaurant, or go to the elevator. I think those kind of proven successful methodology that China been practicing maybe should be also applied elsewhere, so that we can really contain this together. Because only when other countries also contain, when the whole world is safe, China is finally safe. There's no country is an isolated island, so we have to really work on this together.
Are those tactics, though, compatible with democracies? For example, here in China, almost anywhere I go, I have to show a QR code, which has been tracking whether my cell phone has been anywhere near anybody who might be even potentially infected. So there's a lot of cell phone tracking going on. In addition, while there may not be cases right now, anybody who has tested positive has been isolated, and that has included even taking children away from their families until the children get better. Do you think other countries are going to be prepared to make those kind of compromises on privacy and on very forceful isolation procedures in order to try to bring the virus under control?
Yeah, I think that you ask a really good question. And, I think this Oriental culture, like not only China, but you can see Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea, and even to some extent Japan, the individualism sometimes give way to the collectivism because of if one person get affected and then he goes around and then he has no the collective in mind, then the whole community suffers. So I think sometimes probably we have to balance a little bit about individualism and the well-being of the whole society, of the whole community. So probably if we suffer a little bit of individual rights, but then you give the certainty, you give the assurance, you give the great health to the community, maybe it's worthwhile. So that's why you see other countries may have a second wave or third wave coming back, whereas China basically has astonishingly has kept this under control, whereas no new cases occurring throughout the country. That's really this big data and also quarantine, social distance, and all those methodology worked. But of course, you're right. I think we have to respect individual privacy, data privacy. That's why we see that Chinese government actually recently proposed 8 proposals on the data flow and data management, which they stipulate that the government should not force companies to send in data from foreign countries, or data privacy should be respected. So many causes like that. So I think that we have to really strike a balance. We can't just everybody stay at home. So how to do that? I mean, China is almost 95% back to normal in terms of the production and the working hours and things like that. Domestic travel has fully resumed. So I think that we have to take those good measurements to do that, but also in the same time taking into consideration how we can protect and privacy of the data as well.
While the Chinese economy does seem to be clicking along well now, in the sense that the airports are full, the hotels are full, the restaurants are full, auto sales seem to be recovering. At the same time, we're seeing China take a rather potentially sharp shift in economic policy with the so-called dual circulation model that has recently been rolled out, partly in response to the pandemic. The idea that there's domestic circulation and there's international circulation, but that domestic circulation, the domestic economy, is being emphasized. China, to some extent, where it is by having a lot of export success. Is the pandemic pushing China into a more inward-looking policy that might leave China, for example, less open to foreign investment in the technology it brings, that might limit China's ability to continue to play as large a role in foreign markets as it has? What is going to be the effect of this dual circulation policy that's been introduced partly in response to the pandemic?
Thanks, Keith. This is an excellent question. I think probably many people are really wondering these questions and wondering why China is proposing a dual circulation policy. I was actually about a week ago, we Center for China Globalization, our think tank, was having a dialogue with 25 ambassadors from different countries at our event. They asked the same question. It seems to be on the people's mind in many countries. What I actually interpret this is that actually the COVID-19 has served as big lessons for all of us, all the countries. The international market is demanding, probably is softening, and also domestic marketing is also softening as well. And also in the past, China have an export-led industry that only serve an international market. Now they find that probably have to learn how to serve the domestic market. But also China now has the consumption power has greatly increased with the digital economy, 1 billion smartphone users, 2/3 of the high-speed rail of the world, and the fastest 5G networks throughout the country. There's 400 million people of the middle class. The purchasing power has greatly increased. And also 1.4 billion will be eliminating extreme poverty by the end of this year. So you can see the domestic demand is there already. So how to cultivate that domestic demand is also one of the measurement for going through this pandemic crisis. So I think that Chinese government realized that domestic demand is there. Why not stimulate domestic demand? But stimulating domestic demand in internal circulation doesn't mean that they're going to put less on the international circulation. On the contrary, actually, international circulation will only be helped with this domestic circulation stronger. For example, I use a comparison. It's like it's like a bicycle. You need two wheels. If you want the bicycle to go faster, one wheel is domestic, one wheel is international. Both wheel has to rotate fast enough so that we can drive each other fast towards the objective. So I think by having the domestic circulation, which in another way is actually stimulate more international demand, international circulation. For example, China just announced they're going to have add a few more international free trade zone in China. So now 21 provinces and municipalities, including Beijing, has been designated as a free trade zone. So that is really for foreigners, for international trade and investment. So I think that the dual circulation strategy is really to stimulate Chinese economy, but on the other hand, also to stimulate the domestic demand for the international products, but also better serve the international community and the countries from the global value chain that China has been really building in the last 4 decades.
Okay, thank you. Let's switch to Hong Kong. Particularly as this is a democracy forum, a lot of people all over the world have been expressing concern that the Chinese government is limiting the opportunities for democratic expression in Hong Kong with the new national security law that took effect on July 1. Just yesterday, for China's National Day, we saw thousands of police smothering attempts at protests in Hong Kong by some of the more limited numbers of democracy protesters who are still trying to take to the streets, but a pro-Beijing demonstration that also had more than the 4 people prohibited by, that's the limit under the pandemic regulations, that pro-government demonstration was not shut down. Is China limiting more now the opportunities for democratic expression in Hong Kong?
Yeah, thanks, Keith, for that question. I think that regarding the issue of Hong Kong, first of all, I think the Hong Kong young people have legitimate reasons to complain. I think for the last 23 years of return to mainland, the Hong Kong people actually, particularly young people, felt that they've been neglected. They had, the gap is really getting narrowed between Hong Kong and mainland. For example, Shenzhen, as a matter of fact, neighboring Shenzhen 40 years ago, just a village next to Hong Kong, now is already overtaken Hong Kong in GDP terms. So you can see how Hong Kong now is only counting about 2% of China's GDP now. The land and also the skyrocketing housing prices and things like that has made Hong Kong young people feel there's not a bright future for them. So they've been really getting on the streets and also express their angers. But on the other hand, I think any society, any region, any country also needs stability and the law and order. So I think if you have a legitimate, more peaceful demonstration, that is okay. But then when that gets into violent, for example, last year we see Hong Kong airport has been blocked for weeks. We see that legislative council being stormed and smashed. We see the shops being vandalized. We see the bystanders being putting gasoline to burn and things like that. It's really very chaotic, and nobody's coming to Hong Kong. Hong Kong is really felt not safe anymore. No people get there to go out. It's become probably a ghost town, and that's really also. They used to have 8 million mainland tourists to Hong Kong. Now they have no more. So I think, and also even more worse is that some people even propose that Hong Kong going to be independent, and Hong Kong wants to have a universal re-election, which is probably too advanced for China to go on that route. So I think at some point of time, I mean, Hong Kong has the time to put this on its national security law. Article 23 has allowed that, and for the past 23 years they haven't done that. Probably in retrospect they should pass that in 2003. But chaotic situation, no country can now, even in the United States. So that I think the central government has the legitimacy of, they have the authority on defense, diplomacy, and security. So I think it was they were forced to come up with the national security law to really bring the order and the law back to Hong Kong. But also they've been launching this Great Bay, Guangdong Bay project, where Hong Kong young people can come and freely, and now they can buy housing, they can, with subsidy, they can go work there, go school there, get married, buy cheaper apartments. So the government has really proposed many policies to address the Hong Kong issue, and also Hong Kong property price will be dampened, for the working class. So I think there's some measures taken. So it probably takes time, but what I can see, this since national law come into place for the last 3 months, Hong Kong is really now safe to walk around, and business are back. Tourism are probably starting to come back. You know that 80 to 90% of Hong Kong listed company are from China. And now we're going to see the biggest IPO in the world going to happen in Hong Kong with Ant from Alibaba Group. So business is coming back, including many U.S. investors and the pension funds and things like that. So I think, certainly it's not an ideal situation. There's a price to pay. But I think the majority of people, which is 3 million people, voted in favor of this national security law. They want peace and stability, and they want their routine life and also come back. So I think in that sense, this is not an ideal situation. But I think in the long run, if we give a bit of long horizon, we'll see Hong Kong continue to prosper. We'll see Hong Kong continue to be as a meeting point between East and West. We'll see Hong Kong be because Hong Kong hosts over so many thousands of Western companies. So I hope that some of the issue will be addressed gradually.
Let's briefly cut to a question from the audience that has just come in, expressing concern about antagonism between the United States and China as a risk to humanity, and asking what role you see for China in particular at the United Nations Security Council in order to try to limit the potential for further confrontation between the United States and China. Over to you, Dr. Wang, on that question from our audience.
Yeah, I think that U.S. and China being the founding member of UN, China is the first to sign the Charter of UN. It's really unfortunate to see U.S. and China being the two largest economy in the world is not really working with each other. So we have to really have that under control. And so what I think the most urgent issue actually for us is now the pandemic fighting. That the two largest economy in the world has the moral responsibility to lead the world on that efforts, to work with the EU, Japan, and other countries, to India, and to work on that. Second, I think that climate change is the world is burning. I mean, we are affected by that. We should shift from the mutually assured of destruction to a mutually assured of dependency. I think that we really depended on each other. We are in the same boat. We are on the same planet. Now we are having 75 years of UN. That 75 years ago, we have a Bretton Woods conference that really set up the UN and prevented the Third World War. Now we have a worldwide virus war now, and fighting human beings. We should, as a human being, we should all united and work together. So that we now need the new Bretton Woods moments. We need really working with each other, and so that I think that U.S. and China and other EU and Japan, all the other countries should really work together so that we should set aside our differences. We should really think about the human beings as a whole, so that U.S. and China and the United Nations should be strengthened, WHO should be strengthened, and WTO should be strengthened, and then we should really rely on the multilateralism rather than unilateralism to solve all those problems that facing United States and China.
Okay, thank you. Why don't I pick up a little more on the question then of U.S.-China relations? What is your sense of what China, or at least the Chinese elite, would like to see in terms of the outcome of the November 3rd elections? I've heard voices here in favor of Biden here in Beijing. I've heard voices in favor of Trump's re-election.
I think that if President Trump going to get elected, he probably will continue phase 2, phase 3, because he has a business background. I mean, he always liked to win commercially, so that I think that he will carry on with phase 2 and phase 3. The problem probably is that he has a very hawkish advisors around him that maybe still have more proposals or sanctions out of his very hawkish advisor. On the other hand, for Biden, I think he's coming from a more democratic government, democratic background, but then he really has a lot of experience in terms of internationally. He has been vice president before, but also he has been. I think he will reassert U.S. leadership in the Western world, and also he probably favors multilateralism. Like he said he will coming back to the Paris Accord. He will join the WHO. He will reform WTO. And he even probably could possibly return to TPP, now CPTPP. So which means that he'll pursue more channels. For example, on the climate change, U.S. and China being the two largest polluters in the world, they have to talk to each other. I'm glad President Xi mentioned that China will neutralize the carbon by 2016. China has the first time set a very clear objective now. That they are very pragmatically trying to achieve that. So I think, and also China has established a green dialogue with the EU after the China-EU summit. So I think that it's probably Biden will have more platform and channels to talk with China. So if we have quite a few fronts to talk multilaterally, then maybe we can have a little bit less intensified war. We may have a more dialogue rather than confrontation. Which I think that probably this is what people would hope for. But also I think that the U.S. business, particularly U.S. consumers, would also want to see a more stabilized relation between China and the U.S. As we know, China and the U.S. has been established diplomatic ties for the last 4 decades. There's over 70,000 U.S. companies operates in China, generated 700 billion revenues. That GM Ford sells more cars in China than the United States. Apple sells over 20% of its products in China, the largest overseas market for Apple. And Boeing sells 1/3 of their airplane to China. And the chip industry, semiconductor industry, sells 1/3 of that to China. Also, I think the business is really hurting. Consumers are hurting. The economy is hurting. The fighting between China and U.S. will lead the world into a recession. That probably is the biggest threat that facing the whole globally. And then we really have to solve this in a peaceful manner. I think EU probably can play more role in mediating the difference between China and U.S. Why don't we have a trilateral meetings between China, EU, and United States? And then so that we can go back to a bit more civilized dialogue and discussions on that.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we change subjects to Xinjiang, which has been in the news again in the last few days. The concern there from not just American officials, but also human rights experts, has been that China has established very large barbed wire encircled facilities and detained as many as 1 million members of mostly Muslim ethnic minorities for so-called vocational education. What is China's stance on Xinjiang?
Well, I think that the Xinjiang issue probably is you need a little historical background to see that. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, when when the Al-Qaeda and also ISIS and all those terrorists, rampant, Afghanistan and all those where, Bin Laden, Xinjiang was actually plagued by the terrorist attack, and many lives, hundreds of lives were lost, and Xinjiang was in chaotic state, but nobody dares to go to Xinjiang. So I think that government have to address that. So I think they probably take some measures, but I think there's also the Chinese government has issued a white paper saying that all the vocational schools or training courses centers, the trainees has been graduated already. And then they recently had a central government Xinjiang meeting. I think they said in the future they will have a more central government coordinated approach rather probably than the local one. So I think they realized the complaints, but also there are many ambassadors, many countries, many journalists has been visiting Xinjiang. Xinjiang has been really booming, and with the GDP growth at probably historical high, with the tourism back and the livelihood is really restored. I think there could be some problem. I mean, I don't deny there may be some problems, but the thing is that the number they said 1 million Uyghurs was in a camp. I don't know where that 1 million is coming from. I really has puzzled on that, because there's only 8-9 million Uyghurs totally in Xinjiang. If 1 million is already in the camps, I mean that means probably one from every family, which I think it's probably not true. It's not really accurate. So the data, the evidence, I don't know where that comes from. That 1 million number, I don't know where it's originated. I mean, now some people say 3 million, 2 million, 3 million. So the number go wild. But in fact, if you go to Xinjiang these days, you see very peaceful. There's no more terrorist attack. Everything is peaceful. I think that the government has realized the international complaints. They're trying to correct that. Maybe giving Xinjiang more support, more way of wishes as the local people do. So I think that we really welcome foreigners to visit Xinjiang, and ambassadors, journalists, maybe they should visit Xinjiang and really get a picture out of that. So I think that it's a terrorist problem that plagued the world in many years in the past. So China has done something, have set up a vocational school, training school for some people that trying to let them have a stable life, and so that really so you haven't seen a single incident of a terrorist attack in the last 5 years. Just from a think tank point of view, I think that China is realizing international attention on this. China is trying to make Xinjiang as prosperous, as peaceful, as lively, as loved by the people locally as much as possible. So I think in the time to come, you will be fine. Yeah.
One last question. You are one of the leaders, really, in helping to encourage Chinese scholars to return to China after studying and working in the West. But now the United States has been expressing a lot of concern that as a result, a lot of technology may have been transferred to China. Should the United States be imposing all of these restrictions and putting so much scrutiny on Chinese scholars, including those who have gone back to China?
Yeah, no, I think it's really not serving the purpose of both countries. I mean, U.S. has been a magnetic for attracting talents all over the world. I think that's the core competence of the United States. That's the American dream that admired by the worldwide. So we actually, China is a net talent loser to the United States, even though we have a large number of students going to the United States. But in terms of the PhD in the science and technology area, 80% remained in the United States, which generated enormous innovation and society building for the United States, which I think U.S. is really harvesting a lot of talents from China. But now that U.S. is starting to really attacking on student visas, or maybe stop some of the exchanges, I think it's really no good, because these people-to-people exchanges are so important. you have a 500,000 Chinese students in the United States, which generate 200 to 300 billion income to the U.S. universities and the communities. There's also another 3 million Chinese tourists around the U.S. in the past, which also generate another 500 billion probably to the United States as well, 50 billion to the United States as well. So I think that this trend is not healthy, and we really need more U.S. students come to China. I think this people-to-people exchange, people's bond is important. We need them as bridges. Once they studied in the U.S., they will have a nice impression of the U.S. They really become the bridges and help U.S. companies doing business in China, help Chinese company investment in the U.S. I think that we should not stop that bond that we've been established for the last 4 decades, and so that we don't have this good agenda for the international student, which is no good for the United States.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Wang. We really appreciate your joining us with the New York Times and the Athens Democracy Forum here. It's been really a pleasure to speak to you and to get your views on all of these subjects. I'm going to turn us back over to the hosts in Athens again now. But thank you very much again for coming on the show today from Chengdu. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith, and thank you, Mr. Murphy.